एक तो ऑपरेशन में तो पहले खाना नहीं बनाना चाहिए, उसको आराम नहीं मिला है, उसको एक दिन आराम नहीं मिला है क्या, ना वो ढंग से खाना खा पा रही है।
देखो ये भाई म्यूट क्या नहीं रहा यार।
अक्षय बंद करना दारू माइक करना है वीडियो।
Good evening, everybody. Wanted to know from my Bengal Chamber team whether our chairman sir have joined, speaker sir has joined. Yes, Mr. Ritesh Sinha is already here. Thank you, sir, for joining and giving us this opportunity. We are really looking forward to hear from you. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. Thank
Has
you.
Jitendra sir joined? Ritesh ji, allow us 2 minutes. I'm just checking with my chairman and my committee member. I'm getting back.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
From Yuva Unstoppable, somebody have, I think, shared your whiteboard. Yeah, thank you. Jitendra sir, the chairman of the committee, Mr. Jitendra Kumar, is joining us shortly. In the meantime, I would like to thank all our today's participants who have joined. I'm seeing multiple login from Mr. Parth Vasavara. I think that is from Yuva Unstoppable. So, welcome all of you. As our chairman will be taking a few more minutes because he got stuck in some prior engagements. So, without waiting further, as advised by the chairman, I would like to begin our today's session. We all are eagerly waiting to hear from Mr. Ritesh Sinha. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry is extremely honored to have Mr. Ritesh Sinha as our speaker today. On behalf of the National CSR Committee of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce and Industry, it is my pleasure to welcome all of you at the third edition of our CSR talk show. This talk show is originated by the CSR Committee of the Bengal Chamber. The CSR Committee of the Bengal Chamber is led by Jitendra Kumar of Exide Industries, and the entire committee is supported by very enthusiastic committee members like Mr. Nishant Sinha, Mr. Parth Vasavara, and many more who have always joined hand and helped us in taking the activities of the committee move forward. Over the past editions, we have been fortunate to engage with thought leaders of the industries, passionate change makers like Mr. Ashwini Saxena, the then CEO of JSW Foundation, Dr. Bhaskar Chatterjee, who is a retired IAS and a very senior member of the chamber. And he also pioneered the CSR Policy 2013, bringing unique perspectives and on how business and society can thrive together. This year, theme CSR and sustainability beyond engaging stakeholders in CSR initiatives. I'll just take the call from Mr. Kumar. Just give me a minute. Sorry, the chairman is joining. He just wanted the link to be shared, so we are doing that. So as I was mentioning that our theme is CSR sustainability beyond the company, engaging stakeholders in CSR initiative, because it reflects a vital shift on how we view impact, moving from isolated actions to inclusiveness and stakeholder-driven changes. We are extremely honored that we have amongst us Mr. Ritesh Sinha. He's the head of ESG at HDFC Bank. He's a seasoned sustainability professional with 25 years of experience in CSR. request my colleague Abhishek and Srijoy to please put up the slide on Mr. Sinha's achievements, the profile, so that all present here can view his contribution to the industry. We are very fortunate to have him. He has a professional experience of more than 25 years in CSR, ESG integration, and climate resilience across leading corporates. He is an alumnus of Columbia Business School and ISB and a certified ISO lead auditor. He brings deep expertise in aligning sustainability with business strategy. He leads impactful programs aligned with UN SDGs, focusing on carbon neutrality, inclusive development, and the circular economy. So, we really look forward to learn from you today and hear your insights. With that, I would like to thank all the members, all the participants who have joined us and helped us to take this session forward. Without further ado, I would request Ritesh ji to please take the today's session forward.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible. I request my colleagues to give Ritesh ji the co-host right also. In case he wants to share anything on screen, it will be easier for him. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bose, and greetings to Mr. Jitendra Kumar, Honorable Chairman of the Bengal Chamber of Commerce. And first of all, I would start with complimenting the Chamber of Commerce. I have been tracking it very closely for last 1 year plus, and the kind of engagements that you have conducted are remarkable and will lead to a lot of interventions in sustainability. Some of the thought leaders have in the past shared some great insights, and that as professionals, all of us, enrich our values as well as our learnings. Um, so I have a few slides. If you allow me, then I can share it. Yeah,
Yeah, co-host right has been given to you.
thank you. Yeah. Mhm. Let me know if when my screen
It's visible, sir.
comes. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So I think today's topic is extremely critical because what we are going to talk about is stakeholders. The entire drive for CSR, or for that matter, business or anything we do, starting from how we engage with our families, are all examples of stakeholder engagement. Uh, so in the past, we have seen that stakeholder engagements were largely driven with informal networks, where and then it starts at family level, the way you engage with your parents, the way you engage with your children, your friends, your communities, your neighborhood. They're all stakeholders in our existence. And when we move up the ladder, when we start talking about corporates, start talking about, let's say, the political environment, the decision makers, all of them are driven by the entire agenda of how they engage with stakeholders. So I'll just draw some parallel to the governance aspect, where the critical elements, the critical issues of the stakeholders are identified, by the governing bodies, and accordingly, they try to address it. It is important for a sustained political environment, geopolitical balances, and so on. So that is the level of significance stakeholder engagement should get, and I'm happy to share that it is indeed getting that kind of traction, and it has started to reflect on the corporate reportings also, with dedicated disclosures on how we engage with stakeholders across the country. All of us know that CSR which has evolved significantly in India. We have completed 1 decade after the CSR rules were promulgated in 2013-14. And we have seen how the evolution has enriched the entire development ecosystem. It has moved from charitable donations without contesting the importance of that. It has its own merit. But there is a strategic approach to community development and a more focused approach to community development. Overall, as we move ahead, we have already become the fourth largest economy, and we are likely to become the third largest very soon. So there's a lot of importance that we need to accord to the way we engage with the stakeholders, and more so because economic progress is driven by how the businesses, the business conglomerates, and associations are helping this entire economic progress. And that needs to embed the philosophies of stakeholder engagement, internally as well as externally, and so that it addresses the actual problems of the diverse socio-economic landscape that we have in our country. So, while during the journey of this presentation, I may skip a few slides, and I would request this to be an open conversation, a dialogue. If there's anybody who wants to ask something, wants me to share my opinion, I'll be happy to, dive deeper on some of these slides. So feel free to interact. It always enriches my learning when we listen from the people who are participants in this forum today. So what is the entire process of stakeholder engagement? What is stakeholder engagement? And particularly emphasizing on CSR, it is even more critical. So what it involves is, first is identifying. So systematically identifying, understanding their needs, incorporating their perspectives, how their entire existence, their roles and responsibilities, and it gets affected by the company's operations and initiatives. So the word here I would like to underline is on systematically. So it cannot be a notional understanding. It should not be, the company's understanding of what the stakeholder would be thinking about us. So therefore, the right input is very, very critical when we start planning about the stakeholder engagement. So what essentially it means, it's a multidimensional process. It has to go beyond one-way communication, what as companies we want to tell, but more importantly, what we want to hear. Therefore, the second word to be highlighted is the dialogue and collaboration. Without that, it is very difficult to have an actual understanding of what the stakeholders' expectations are, what their concerns are, and without which a meaningful program cannot be evolved. If you look at the impacted parties in a company CSR decisions and its effective implementation, how they are involved, how they are engaged, and how they collaborate and participate throughout the journey, right from planning to implementation to results to sustenance of the results, as well as progress based on the results achieved after the projects get closed. And this is the last point is very, very critical. So when we talk about sustainability of the results, whatever we have achieved through the CSR interventions, how does the interventions actually look at self-evolving, self-developing, going in line with the overall progress and evolution thereafter, after you exist? So therefore, the mechanisms to be installed is very critical, working with the parties and the stakeholders. It is certainly essential for creating effective, credible, and sustainable outcomes. It should create shared value, which will entail active participation rather than passive receiving. So it's not a donation. It's not really a grant making as such, but it's more of a collaborative solution, which, is extremely critical for stakeholder engagement in CSR. why does it matter in India, right? So India is a unique context, because it takes a special significance. One, because there's a regulatory requirement. The second is socio-cultural factors. There's a lot of diversity in our country. The landscape varies. The social challenges and issues vary. So therefore, it is important that and India is the only country which has a regulatory requirement on CSR spend, which is of course 2%. I think everyone attending the session knows about this. Diversity, socioeconomic conditions vary across regions. Uh, then we are very recently, in last maybe decade or two, in last 15, 20 years, we have seen rapid growth of urban centers. There's a lot of modernization, a lot of infrastructure work that is going on in our country, and it has its own pros and cons, and it has to then be dependent on how these development affect people and how their concerns are embedded as far as the planning and implementation of large scale infra projects are concerned. So, because of rapid modernization, we also need to understand that people should not be left behind in the journey of progress. And the last and most important aspect is, how do you build and maintain trust, right? How are, as CSR personnel, as business personnel, how are we not seen as an outsider, but how we are seen as an insider, as party, as a collaborator? That is extremely critical, and that is why it is extremely important as far as our country is concerned. Yeah. So there was a hand raised. If there's a question, feel free to either ask or type. So I can very happily respond to it if you have any question related to this slide. Who are these stakeholders? So more importantly, the shareholders and investors. What do they want? They want financial returns. They want to check that the social impact of the business, how that is happening in a positive way. They are also looking at the ESG performance of companies, particularly in last 4 5 years. Uh, and that has been one of the factor of making an investment decision. So therefore, shareholders and investors look at our performance as a company overall, on how we are engaging on the social front, right? They also regularly evaluate the CSR compliance, the entire process, effectiveness, impact, and so on. And these are some very relevant points that, as a company, all of us would know that the investors and shareholders are extremely interested to understand how we are performing on these metrics. The government authorities, extremely critical. They are the regulators, and they are the potential collaborators for scale. Whatever we do as part of CSR is minuscule as far as compared to the public spending is concerned. So how can we have partnerships, that can extend the CSR initiatives to actually scale up and sustain the impact? If there's a government buy-in, then certainly the impacts will be sustained over a period of time, and therefore their engagement is crucial. Employees Employees are also a very critical stakeholder as far as the company is concerned. They can participate as volunteers in CSR initiatives, and we have seen some of the results. That shows that there's an increase in retention by up to 24% when employees are also aligned with meaningful social projects. So, what is the extra that you are putting up to the employees, and therefore creating avenues for employees to get engaged, but not just for the sake of volunteering, but a very meaningful volunteering, which matches the skill sets of the employees, which matches the requirements of the geography, and based on this only, a meaningful impact-oriented engagement plan should be done for the employees. The local communities, ultimately, the entire drive for CSR is for the local community who are the primary beneficiary. So, how do we get the right insight on actual needs? A perceived need from a corporate side versus vis-a-vis the actual need of the community, they must align. So, a perceived needs either needs to be corroborated by actual needs through actual representation on ground, understanding the situation in greater detail, and then move ahead with the further planning. And we have seen that most of the successful projects in India are all community-led design, and that has led to greater adoption rates. NGOs and civil society, we have more than 3 million NGOs in our country which have active operations currently in the country. So their engagement in implementation of the projects, they bring a lot of skills to the table, and their presence is critical. I would say the central pillar for driving the change and sustaining the change. As far as CSR implementation is concerned. Now there are two, I would say, or rather one group of stakeholder which I have not mentioned here. Whatever I have mentioned in these five categories of stakeholders, they are all beings. There are people behind it, right? But one of the other aspect or a critical stakeholder who even cannot represent themselves is the environment and the flora and the fauna, right? So progress, development, modernization, all such projects has its impact on the environment, the society, the flora, and the animal population. So being conscious, and unfortunately, they cannot even represent themselves. So how are we conscious about having a proper understanding of the requirements of the need through behavioral patterns? And fortunately, we have wildlife patterns available, and that also needs to be integrated. And maybe I'll just use one example here. Uh, in Kerala, in one of the projects, for HDFC's CSR, there were a lot of elephant coming to the community. So that was one of the problem areas that was identified. And through proper research and understanding and engaging the right people to develop an understanding of why exactly is this happening. So we realized that fresh water was an issue. The elephants would come to the villages for fresh water. So while the entire progress plan, the CSR projects were getting implemented, there was a water body created outside the village boundary, at the cusp of the forest and the village, for elephants to come have their water, and they would kind of go away without disturbing the villagers. And and we installed a CCTV to check the behavior of the elephants in that area. And we saw that such incidents of human animal conflict reduced by almost 80% plus. So, I thought I'll just share that example here, because such stakeholders who are critical, who have the uh, potential to either, harm you or mislead the entire outcomes. And therefore, it is critical that we also understand how their concerns and considerations are also embedded.
So, this is Shukana here.
Which
We
we
have
need
from audience. Before you move to the next slide, we would like to place it. Is it okay, or do I place the question after your presentation?
So, no, I think we can take the questions as and when they come.
So we have got a question from Sritama saying that why did the CSR model change from shareholder to stakeholder model?
Yeah. So, shareholder represents only one aspect of the entire stakeholders. Shareholders' interests ultimately are also vital for any business to sustain. But shareholders is looking at profit maximization, their own earnings coming out of this, and the business to sustain has to then look at the other stakeholders also. I mean, a shareholder will benefit only if the company sustains. Therefore, we moved from a shareholder model to a stakeholder model, and that happened long back. If you look at some of the leading examples, if you take the example of, let's say, Tata's, the ITCs, the leading manufacturing companies that existed historically, all of that models where they would incorporate the feedback, the understanding of the expectations of the local stakeholders. And so I would say that it has not really moved as such. The stakeholder engagement model existed, but I think it has taken a better shape these days because there is a very structured aspect of one expectation from the regulator. As a corporate, we are, in some of the regulatory compliance, we are asked about how the process of stakeholder engagement, right? For us, let's say customer is a stakeholder for us, even if they're not, let's say, a shareholder, right? A vendor is also a stakeholder because they will provide you services, which will help you do better, right? Consulting organizations, they are stakeholders. So all of them are critical for any business to have a sustainable performance, not only on the economic parameters, but also on the other aspects. So when I think in 2004-5, when we started to talk about the triple bottom line approach, that is when the profit maximization gave way to also balances between the planet and the profit and the society. And since then, I think we have focused more as a fraternity of corporates. We started to focus more on stakeholder models. Yeah. Any other question?
There is a hand raised from one of our attendees.
Yes,
Sriju,
please.
can we get the Sritama again? Anshu Beri. Anshu Beri and Sritama. I think Anshu Beri ji and Sritama, if you can type down your questions, then it will be easier for us to convey to our speakers and they will answer you. So while
Yeah.
we get the questions, sir, you may
Sure.
proceed and we will share.
Sure. And I will also encourage if somebody from the participants also want to respond to some of these questions. I think that will lead to more interaction as well.
Okay, I'm checking the technicalities. Where will the participants be able to talk? That my backing team had to let me know.
Yeah, so they can just post
Then
on the
please
chat
allow
box.
Sritama ji and Anshu Beri to say what they
Yeah,
want to ask.
they can ask the questions. We need to.
Okay. So do we, Anshu ji, if you want to say something, please proceed. You're on mute.
Good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Good evening, Ritesh sir. Glad to meet you. And good evening, team BCCI and participants. My question is, it was very interesting to understand that environmental flora and fauna are also stakeholders in any intervention that we do. So could you please elaborate a bit on this statement?
Yeah. So I gave the example of the human-animal conflict, and we have seen significant examples, a number of news coverages, let's say coming from Assam, from Kerala, from Jharkhand. You have animal corridors that has been created. These are all part of understanding of the behavior patterns of the fauna of a particular geography, which means that somebody would have taken into consideration, let's say the government would have taken into consideration the patterns in which we need to provide them a safe space. When we talk about environment, there are a lot of regulations that now talk about controlling your emissions, having practices that are if not positive for towards the environment, at least it should not have long-term negative impact on the society, right, and to the planet itself. So that is why when I say that if you look at the entire net zero journey, like our country has committed to become net zero by 2070. So there is a mandate. Now it's a mandate, which means that it applies to all of us to align ourselves and therefore understand environment as a stakeholder. Whatever we do has a bearing on the environment and certainly the forests, the land assets, and so on. So that is what I mean when we say environment, flora and fauna are critical stakeholders for all our plan. In a bank, for example, if we evaluate, let's say, a loan application, we would look at what kind of impact it is likely to make. Any other question? If you want to understand how do we do it, then it will be a separate thing. It will take me 10-15 minutes to talk about it. But I'm happy to connect with you offline and share with you the models that we approach in identifying the critical aspects of engagement as far as the environment and animal aspects are concerned, who cannot represent their concerns or expectations. So we adopt some biological and behavioral pattern models to understand those.
I think there's another question from Manali Mondol. Manali, would you like to place it or do you want us to place it? Manali Mondol. Sritama has again raised hand. Yes, Sritama, please go ahead.
Much, ma'am.
So if I can request, sorry to interrupt. So can we take up the questions answer session towards the end? Otherwise, we will not be able to complete this session.
Thank you, sir. I think very valid because I have few slides to go through. And I've just started. So if
Right.
there are questions, if you could just put it on the chat box, and I'll be happy to answer. If I'm able to answer, I'll certainly respond
Sure.
offline later.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So moving on, what are the models that motivate Indian companies for CSR? So one is, of course, the value-driven model, which we call the ethical model, which was, Sarvajan Hitay, Sarvajan Sukhay was the philosophies that a lot of traditional Indian businesses had taken up. The business existed for benefit and happiness of all. And, I have mentioned the example of Tata Group, because they have a legacy of more than a century of having CSR ingrained, of social development ingrained in their founding principles. The second model is statist model, where state define, the government drives, it mandates, it legally mandates, and therefore there are certain compliance metric that has been set. But this independently and alone may not be able to achieve the desired impact, right? So therefore, engagement strategies, the kind of innovative ideas that needs to be brought forth cannot be completely dependent on a statist model. It has to look at other aspects also. The third is the liberal model where the investments are largely focusing on brand value enhancement, market position. And while I say this, we know that the CSR rules does not allow direct or indirect promotion of the business through CSR funding. However, there are liberal model basically creates a win-win situation where we create entrepreneurship in society, and that way there's a profit driven but a shared profit model that exists. And the last one is the stakeholder model, responds to multiple interests and interest groups. So this is more of a holistic approach. You look at all the diverse stakeholders, you balance your programmatic outcomes, your programmatic interventions, looking at what the society is expecting from you. And this will vary from business to business, from type of business to type of business. If you are a manufacturing company, the material aspects for a manufacturing company will be very, very different from, let's say, the material aspects applying to a banking and finance sector industry, to a service sector industry, and so on. And it also depends on where are you present geographically. So if the concerted existence is, let's say, for a manufacturing plant will be in a particular geography, but there will be retail based businesses which will have a larger presence. But with a smaller, like for a bank, we have, let's say, about 9,000 branches and offices across the country. But these are small operational units. But if you look at a iron and steel company or a cement manufacturing plant, so then the model will be different, the expectations will be different, and the engagement model will also need to be aligned accordingly. So next, moving on to how do you identify stakeholders? Extremely key. How do you identify these stakeholders? First is map. And be open, be exhaustive as much as you can. Identify everything. And as I said, even the section of the society or the environment which cannot represent itself. So you need to be exhaustive. First, all potential stakeholders that is impacting you or getting impacted by you or interested in you or you are interested in them. Then we need to have a list drawn. Which are these? It could be a group of people. It could be particular class of let's say asset holders and so on. And then you need to prioritize the stakeholders and simultaneously also prioritize their concerns, because it's not that you only want to address the people who matter the most. Of course, you want to do it to them. But people who may not have that kind of voice, who may not have that kind of an appeal, who may not be able to influence you that much, but if they're impacted in a very big way, then the understanding has to be evolved for them, and it need to be addressed for that. Their concerns also need to be addressed. So prioritization is not only about the stakeholders, right? Navigate through power dynamics, their social hierarchies, uh, and ensure inclusive representation. This is what I'm trying to tell you, that we must understand people who are not able to represent themselves properly, who are not very vocal, but they are getting impacted. Then their concern need to be embedded into the entire identification process and prioritization process. Then understand how they can engage with you, how effectively they can engage with you. What let's say the literacy levels will vary in our country. If it's an urban stakeholder, the literacy level will be different. The technological access that people have, some people still have, let's say, working on an analog phone, but some people have access to a smartphone. So overall, understanding how the stakeholder is positioned to engage with us, so that the communication channel has to be established. And then there are, of course, cultural factors of participation. So capacity in terms of how they can engage with us. What are the factors that are inhibiting anybody's capacity to engage with the company? So that analysis will help a company design how to engage. What are the tools that will be deployed for engagement? Then relationship building. So once you have the initial understanding of how to engage with the which stakeholders to engage, we start the process of engaging with the appropriate stakeholders, creating appropriate channels. So some stakeholders will need a proper meeting, robust engagement. Uh, some stakeholders are okay if there's a one-sided communication or a communication that will go at a frequency but not very often. And this also depends from stage to stage as far as your CSR project is concerned. So if it's a planning phase, then pre-planning phase is extremely critical, because the engagement will be very deep and recurring. But when you implement, then it will have a different pathway. Right. And last one is extremely important because, continuous review. So when we design a stakeholder engagement plan, what we end up is a project plan, right? And then the project plan drives the entire implementation process. The project plan drives, so if you are doing a particular CSR program which has a checklist of 50, let's say, items, what is it? What is the understanding here? So we have defined a goal for a project. We want this is to establish a particular outcome within the defined period. So within a 3.5, 4 year period, this is what we will do. This is what we will do because this is what it will lead to. Ultimately, the outcome has been defined, and based on the probable outcome, the entire project plan is a pure assessment, is an hypothetical understanding based on our experiences from the past, or based on some modeling that we have done. We realize that, okay, to give you an example, if you want to increase the literacy level of a particular village, what all do you need to do? So, should you construct more schools? Should you bring in more technology? Should you train more teachers? Multiple approach exist. Maybe in not one approach is may not be sufficient or may be sufficient, but this is only an assumption, right? Even if there's a tested model, it has existed somewhere else. So there's only one way to find out, which is to implement, and therefore a regular continuous process of assessment is required, and a course correction measure needs to be there. But whatever I have said in last 1 minute or so, it is on the project outcomes. What about the stakeholder engagement outcomes? Because many a times the implementation happens in a particular way, and we are not able to track how we are engaging with the stakeholders, and then it becomes a very informal process, which in a way is good, but the recording of this process is extremely critical. How many people have you met? Which are the people who were participants in decision making? Maybe simple things like the location of a farm pond or a village check dam was not right. One, we did not speak with the scientists or the technical people who would have based on the water flow and all of that would have suggested, okay, these are the 3 4 places. Then the society, that okay, this is a place but this belongs to somebody. Will somebody give their land? So all of these factors need to be built in when the planning is concerned. It's not only about constructing a check dam, it's about constructing that check dam in a location which is advantageous to most of the people, which is sustained over a long period of time, and which is scientifically validated. And against this, which are the critical stakeholders? How do we engage with them? Right? Who has a veto power in that set of stakeholders? So I would say that a scientist in this kind of a case, or a soil scientist or a civil engineer probably has a veto power. Say, okay, you are constructing it here, but it will not retain the water. Then the purpose will fail. So therefore, engaging with a particular set of stakeholders also need to be planned. Their concerns need to be recorded and embedded as far as the regular monitoring process is concerned. Yeah. So materiality mapping, as in the corporate sector, we do this materiality mapping in terms of their area of interest, their emerging priorities. We do it from different stakeholder groups. For a regulator, what is their important concern, what is their area of interest, and so on. So materiality mapping, basically, it will help all the environment, social governance, the other issues, that is material to both the business and its stakeholders. And therefore, the key critical areas could become, let's say, and we do a quadrant and we identify that there's a high business impact and high stakeholder interest, right? And therefore, this is a critical part of the entire plan. We must address this. Then other emerging priorities like climate resilience, digital inclusion, affordability of healthcare. Some of these items may not be as critical as the others that I spoke about, but they are gaining a lot of traction now, and these are emerging priorities. These priorities could emerge while the project is under implementation. So how do we navigate through some of these areas of interest? How do we build it into the plan is extremely critical again. And therefore, materiality mapping. So you engage with a lot of stakeholders. You take their concerns, their interests, and map it against the criticality map, and then ultimately the action plan that is under implementation must resonate on whatever data we have generated, whatever understanding we have developed. We need to address, those concerns very effectively to have a meaningful impact of the CSR intervention as such. So, so I have just listed down a few engagement mechanisms. Okay. So if you look at this, very basic structured surveys and feedbacks. So you do a digital or a paper and pen based questionnaires, ask the right, questions, ensure that your questions are tested and is complete, sufficient, right? It should qualify under both these parameters, accuracy, sufficiency, and completeness, so that you get the right insights and accordingly make a note of what is important to all the stakeholders. Community consultations, again, extremely critical, informal, formal, focus group discussions, PRA techniques are deployed. Also understand the traditional decision-making structures, the geographical variance, the societal variance, the cultural variations that are there. So community consultations need to be very adaptive and extremely localized to the extent it could vary every 5 kilometer. Right. So how are we representing, what kind of, to the extent of how we dress up for these meetings sometimes become very critical when it is time to engage with these stakeholders, because we are talking about getting involved, having a proper dialogue. Then we need to be identified as people who will represent their concerns effectively. The third is reporting, which is kind of, one side of the metric where we are talking about transparent sustainability disclosures. It should be there in annual reports, websites, community notice boards, in a language that they can understand, and also an option for them to ask questions, respond to some of the notings made on or notings or disclosures made, so that there is a response and feedback mechanism also built in as far as our public disclosures are concerned. And direct interaction is a day-to-day interaction that people make, meet people. There are media events, creating digital platforms. The more you engage, the more you meet people, the better the understanding about the stakeholder will be. And again, method will drive the effectiveness of the outcomes of a stakeholder engagement. If it is culturally not appropriate, there will be no engagement. If the language is different, people do not understand properly, then the engagement will not lead to the rightful representation of what the stakeholders' expectations are. The third is uh, the motive behind the engagement. Right. So, what is the outcome of such engagements? So that needs to be placed on the table before starting the engagement process. So these are some of the mechanisms that people deploy for engagement. If somebody could also highlight how are we doing on time?
So I think if we can wrap up at least if within 15-20 minutes, then maybe we can open for 5-10 minutes for Q&A.
Yeah, sure, sure. So I think I should be able to finish in next 10 minutes, and then we can have a 10-minute.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So reporting and communication and stakeholder engagement, again, the way we disclose, let's say there's a report, we publish the CSR report every year. So reporting and communication has to be comprehensive. Now, this is the way the company discloses to its first is comprehensive. How comprehensive? So sufficiently disclosed, accurately disclosed, right, and disclosed as per expectations identified by the stakeholders. Right. So let's say one of the stakeholder, or let's say, let's take the example of a shareholder. A shareholder wants the company to talk about well-being, employee well-being. Then is the company covering, reporting and disclosure on well-being measures? Right. So therefore, the expectations will be made. So therefore, recording of those expectations are important, and having those expectations met through reporting will enable. Having said that, there could be many things that one may not be able to cover, but again, therefore, that is where the prioritization comes into picture. What is most material, and to a larger section of the stakeholder groups that should be reported when as companies we publish our reports, either the company's annual report or a standalone CSR report or a GRI report or whatever that mechanism is. It should be available on website. It should be available locally also. It should be accessible by people. And depending on where the business is, it should be available in a local language too. Then reporting through media engagement, you do press releases, executive interviews, media collaborations. That way, the stakeholders get to understand understand the concerns and expectations getting addressed, their concern expectations at the top level also. Right. Digital platforms, it is increasing every day. The access is increasing. People are getting tech savvy, as we speak. So an interactive platform also helps, in engaging with the stakeholders. Visual storytelling, photography, infographics, video documentation in multiple regional languages. This is something that we do as part of our CSR. And we have seen this to be very effective in, people understanding our approaches and so on. So there's something wrong with the font. What is the evidence we see from Indian CSR landscape? Research continuously demonstrates that projects designed with community input has 62% higher sustainability rate. Right? Employee involved initiative report 48% greater volunteer participation. And transparent reporting correlates with 37% increased trust among local communities. So I'm just trying to underpin how important it is if you have a proper, effective stakeholder engagement plan, stakeholder communication plan. It will certainly reflect in the way there's a genuine perception regarding our business, and this of course leads to better brand perception, stronger license to operate, the coexisting of a business within a society is sustained over a long period of time. It reduces the risk and increased innovation through diverse stakeholder insights. I will just, I think I should stop sharing. So I'll quickly touch upon this challenges in stakeholder engagement, and then I will speak about one more aspect. So whatever I have said till now, looks good on paper, but when you get on ground, I'm sure all of us have seen this, and it's starting from family, starting from your daughter and son fighting for something. So there are competing priorities, diverse interests of groups within a particular, heterogeneous society. Even the village setup has a heterogeneous society. So there are competing priorities, there are competing expectations. It's very complex. So that is a big challenge, right? And therefore, it requires a meaningful, careful negotiation, compromise. The optimal solution is what we are looking at. It may not even be the best solution, right? I gave the example of this land asset used for check dam. So the best case scenario needs to be evolved, which is acceptable to everybody. Uh, then there are participation barriers. there are a group within the village. There are groups within the landscape, within the geography, which will not like to participate, uh, which has a preconceived notion, comes with biases. How do you cross those challenges? So there are participation barriers. Gender norms, we see in our country, there are some places where we have strong gender representation and participation, but in some parts of the country, women's representation in community dialogues will be limited, right? Then impact measurement, quantifying social value, long-term impact is very difficult, particularly the contribution of a proper stakeholder engagement practice. All of us agree probably that it brings sustainability, it creates a lot of social value, but quantifying that is slightly challenging. And in that cases, all the traditional metrics, they are not able to capture the outcomes properly. And all of us, again, the last point is power imbalances. We know that there are uh, people who are affiliated to certain thought process within the village itself, and there is a chance of exclusion and inclusion based on the priorities that a particular family or a person would do, and that will distort the process. So, how do we navigate through that? Is again something that should reflect in the stakeholder engagement plan upfront and all of this. So, the rural settlement in our country, if you look at that, is dependent on sometimes on caste, sometimes on even religion, and therefore the equity in representation, the equity in participation, all needs to be taken care of, and nobody's interest should be left out. Right. So we need to look at that and address that too. So I have few slides. I think I'll skip these. I'll move to the conclusion. So what are the key takeaways? Stakeholder engagement is central to impactful Indian CSR, which will transform, philanthropy into a strategic social investment. Successful engagement requires tailored approaches because India is a diverse country, so it should address the complex social challenges in the most balanced way. Companies that excel in stakeholder engagement demonstrate superior business and social outcomes. There are data that proves this. What are the future trends? So it is moving towards co-creation models where stakeholder become true partners rather than beneficiaries. And beneficiaries is a overused terminology. It should not be used to me, because ultimately collaboration partnerships are critical, and therefore a proper terminology should be used according to me. And then future trends also includes your integration of digital technologies because it is rapidly growing. So without the involvement of the latest, basically it's a facilitating aspect of the stakeholder engagement. So in future we are looking at better integration of the technologies. Then growing focus on measuring and communicating social return on investment, and evolution towards ecosystem approaches that address interconnected challenges, and also deployment of learnings from other parts of the country, looking at how effective they are, how can they be contextualized to a particular locality, and then implement it there. So last 1 minute from my side is the future. Is our future our stakeholder? I would say it is. What is changing? What is likely to change in the future? So, if you look at the urbanization trend of the country and the projections, look at the population projections, the urbanization aspect, the demographic, processes, the age group of the current age group, the youth population of our country. How best are we looking at addressing some of the problems that are visibly going to come in the future, let's say in 5 to 10 year horizon or even longer? that needs to be also understood, particularly if we are taking a programmatic approach. If there are companies, many of the companies I have seen moving from a project-based approach to more of a robust program-based approach, understanding what they want to do. Not a special project funding, but it is funding a project which is part of a larger commitment that the company needs to make. And therefore, even better approach to understand what the future will be like, what we know today, and also research on what we don't know today, right? And then build that into some of our program planning. So, and of course, that will lead to how we engage with the stakeholders. So I'll pause here. Happy to take questions, feedback, any other insight anybody has. Happy to answer if I am able to do it now. I'm happy. Otherwise, I can certainly respond to you whenever you want me to.
So thank you, Mr. Sinha, and on behalf of the chairman of the CSR committee, it's really means for sparing the time and spending this valuable experience and which is very engaging and enriching. So thanks a lot on behalf of the entire CSR committee of Bengal Chambers. And being chairman, I have the liberty to ask the first question if I can ask.
Please, sir.
So this is on behalf of the basically relatively smaller NGOs or the implementing agencies. So what we have seen over the years, they have played a very crucial role, particularly at the local level, because they are the one who understand the need of the local community. So now with all kind of stringent audits, kind of impact assessment and ASROI and all those things which are coming up. So their role is probably they are feeling a little bit sidelined and they are not able to get sufficient funding from the big corporates as well. So going forward, what do you see their role in next few years? That's number one. And what kind of effort that needs to be done at their end in terms of knowledge gaining or upskilling so that they still remain relevant in this context and Ramesh try to get more funding, because this is where area one they're saying that they are not getting adequate funding from the corporates. So your thoughts on that?
Thank you, sir, for asking this very pertinent question today. I will respond this in two parts. First is I will talk about what we do or what we have done as part of CSR within HDFC Bank to address this. Completely relate to the challenge. From a corporate angle, if we look at it, the HDFC Bank has about 250 NGO partners today. And there's a dearth of onboarding new partners. So while the kitty grows over a period of time, there are projections that we see. We will need more NGOs to work with us. But a lot of these NGOs do not qualify on some of the compliance parameters that are required, because as a bank, we are more regulated than a common, than a normal corporate also. And our internal processes are also very stringent. So we see a lot of disqualification. Almost 7 out of 10 NGOs that want to work with us could not complete the entire onboarding process because of lack of some or the other kind of a document. So we saw that as a very big challenge. And therefore, we embarked on a journey, I think about 2 years back or 1.5 years back, that we need to also start engaging with the NGO bodies, building their capacity so that they are capable of actually accessing the funds that we have. So we have a 1 year program where we have identified smaller NGOs whom we nourish over a period of 1 year, bring up their compliance standards, help them have develop policies related to, let's say, HR, procurement, all of that. Ultimately